Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Ah, there we go. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We'll give people a couple of minutes here. So far, oh, there's 2 on YouTube, and I can't even tell how many people on Facebook.
I haven't seen it pop up on Facebook.
Well, okay, so I hope your week went well. I think maybe, like I said, we'll give people a couple minutes, but Facebook changed their live stream, so I can't see if anyone's, oh, there, a little tiny little 3 in the corner. Facebook changed the way they live stream, so it's hard for me to see who's here, even how many are here, really. But at least I can see that. It's just kind of small in the corner. Shabbat Shalom. Okay, there we go. If you say Shabbat Shalom, at least I'll know who's here a little bit. Elijah's there, and Zimra's there, and I see at least a couple people on YouTube. So let's go ahead and get started then. Adonai Safatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may tell forth your praise. Let the words from my mouth be your words, not my words. Send your Ruach to deliver your message through me today. Because that's what people need. They need to hear from you. All right. This is, I'm calling this one Abraham's Children. And I'm not sure how quickly you'll see why, but I think you'll see why soon enough. Things that are happening in our society and with some of us personally are coming through as a wake-up call to me. And it's a wake-up call. For some, it can be a wake-up call personally, regarding their own personal spiritual state, but it's also a wake-up call for people who want to be responsible for what they've been entrusted with. And as a teacher, for one thing, that means getting back to an understanding that I realize some people come and they want to be fed a little bit. They want, to learn a couple Hebrew words here and there. For some reason, just a couple words here and there, and to be spoon-fed those words, and so that they can better understand a little bit here and there. And then but the thing is, it's very much to me like that story. I think a lot of you have heard this story. I think Kathy's heard it, I'm not sure, about the fish, right? You give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but you teach a man to fish, and he eats for a lifetime. And I think that's what leaders in the body of Messiah are called to do. We're not called to just give a little bit here and there, and keep most things as some sort of mystery, but to enable you, to equip you, so that you are able more and more as time goes by to find the deeper truths on your own. And part of that deals with learning the languages. Now, I know everyone can't. I get that. Time, money, sometimes it's more difficult for some people to learn languages. There's no specific thing that holds people back from that, though. So, excuses not necessary, right? I mean, age should not hold people back. Anyway, but to equip you to do that means many things. Teaching about figurative language. We were reading in John today where Yeshua, the people didn't understand him because they thought he was speaking literally. So it was important. It's important to understand figurative language. It's extremely important to learn what you can, at least about the original context and the original language, grammar, and these things, right? So that you can grow and understand these things better and not fall for erroneous teachings. Okay, but also, it's a wake-up call for the future of KE and of the faith. I mean, if we don't grow a new crop of leaders who are able to discern and to find those deeper truths for themselves, to really understand what the scriptural message actually is, then leaders today have failed. If we don't raise up leaders, the continuity falters. Now, Scripture tells us that the faith will go on, but we have a job to do. Equipping people is important for that. And so this last week we were looking in the Torah, and we were reading the section in Vayikra, that's Leviticus chapter 7, right? Mm-hmm. About leaders. So maybe we should flip over there real quick. Vayikra, or Leviticus 7 and 8, actually. Actually 8, sorry. Vayikra chapter 8, where Moshe is to take Aaron and his sons and to consecrate them, to set them apart, to consecrate them. He gets the entire community together to do this, by the way. He doesn't do it himself. It's important that a leader is passing he's delegating some authority. He's passing on leadership to someone else. Mm-hmm. And so we have a little bit of a model on how that should be done to some degree, right? And one of the things is Moshe brought Aaron and his sons, washed them with water. Now, this was a literal washing, but we know that the Torah is a shadow. What is this a shadow of? What is it a shadow of, do you think, that Moshe is washing the future spiritual leaders of Israel?
Kind of like what we were reading this week in John, where Yeshua was washed prior to his burial.
Okay. What is it? What is the symbolism of a washing? What do you wash for? Why do you wash?
To make yourself clean.
To make yourself clean. Is there a spiritual cleansing? How do you get clean spiritually?
Accept Yeshua, follow the Torah, follow God's ways.
You learn his ways, you follow his ways, right? Yeshua washing the feet of the disciples. It shows servant leadership. It also makes them clean, makes their feet clean. And there's a little bit in there, Kepha talked about, and my hands too. And he said, if I wash your feet, it's enough. But the washing is purification. And so as a teacher, there's purification. Try to keep your teaching pure. Try to purify people's spirit lives by teaching them the truth, mm-hmm. right? As clearly and as accurately as you can. They didn't just wash them. He put special clothes on them and whatnot. And the people were doing this too. What does it mean if the people are washed, the people are doing washing. You know, they have a part in this as well. I think there's having all of the people present to see the washing and to see them being set apart is meaningful. Why? What do you get from this? Well, if they're there, if they're present, there's no denying. There's no one that can come and say later that, no, that didn't happen. Moshe didn't pick Aharon and his sons.
Witnesses.
No, everyone was there. Everyone was a witness to who the spiritual leaders would be, who was chosen to be their leaders. There's a caring involved in washing too, in this washing and setting apart. There was a care about who these leaders were and for them personally. If you go into, and what else is washing? If you go into the presence of Adonai in an unclean state, what happens to you?
You're dead.
You're dead. You're dead. There's a care. You wash for a purpose, for a reason. You need to be pure in God's sight. Now, this is a shadow of that. And yet, literally, they would have died. If they went into the Holy of Holies as a priest, they would have died.
Mm-hmm.
Why does this matter to you? And I see I see the numbers go up and down in the corner over there. And it's like, I don't think this matters to me. Why do I care about this? If you're a follower of Yeshua, whether you're a natural branch or whether you're grafted in, you are a member now of a royal priesthood. Not just any priesthood, a royal priesthood.
Mm-hmm.
Moshe was there before these guys, and he washed them, and he taught them, he showed them how to make the sacrifices. He was acting as the priest before there was a priest, right? Making the first sacrifices, showing them exactly what to do, even taking their hands and showing them how to wave. This is how you wave, and showing them how to do it. But you are the royal priesthood now. And there's a new generation of priests, and another new generation, and another new generation coming on behind you. And you need to be teaching them.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be washing them. You need to be washing each other. And it's not just about age. New generations of believers, there are believers who are mature, physically speaking, who just became believers in the last few years, or even yesterday. And we need to wash each other.
Well, also, we are representatives of the high priest.
We are representatives, Kathy said. I don't know if you could hear. Can you let me know if you can hear, Kathy, so I don't have to repeat. We are representatives of the high priest. We are a royal priesthood, but we are representatives of the high priest.
And if we claim to people who we are, we better be living that way, or they're going to look at us and think that we're a hypocrite or something.
And so we need to be pure. We need to be washed. We need to be living like we're supposed to be. The priests are held to a higher standard because they should know better. You should know better. You should know better. That's why they're clothed. They're clothed with these special clothes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is on the plate, on the turban that the Kohen Hagadol would wear?
The name?
Partly
Set apart or something?
Kadosh Adonai, holy to Adonai, or set apart for Adonai. In this clothing, I couldn't help thinking, we were reading about some of it in the last week or two. And some of these, there's so many parables that come up. There's so much figurative language about clothing. There are 10 virgins, some who are not, and some of it's not clothing, but it's also about good deeds. There are so many parables about good deeds. The oil for the 10 virgins and 5 don't make it. The oil, if you read it closely, it's talking about their deeds. Some of them didn't do anything. There are the parables about the talents, which again is no close, but the talents that were given to people, and some of them who used their talents and brought more. Talents were money, not necessarily skills. Using those things to build their owners' possessions, which would be the kingdom. When we're talking about the kingdom of Israel, the possessions are the kingdom of Israel, building the kingdom, using their abilities, the things that the resources that he gave them to build the kingdom. That's what we're supposed to be about. And the one who didn't do that, who buried those resources and put them away and hid them, what happened to that person? How did their Adon, the master, look at that servant when he dug up the little bit of resources he had and tried to return those and say, look, I didn't lose them.
Looked at him with contempt, took it from him, gave it to somebody else, beat him up, and threw him outside.
Threw him outside. He called him a wicked servant. A wicked servant. Not just well, you can come in anyway. He didn't just say, well, you can come in anyway. He called him a wicked servant and threw him out. White robes are given to the saints. White robes. We're talking in Revelation, you get a white robe. White robes appear in the Tanakh, showing purity. White robes were wedding clothes. At a Jewish wedding, you wear a kittel, a white robe. And it's very plain. It's not very ornate. It's very plain, because it's not about you. It's not about pride. It's fulfilling the commandment like every other man. When you die, you're buried in the kittel, a very plain garment. You know better, no worse than anyone else, just because you had money or something. White clothes, symbolism, purity. The kittel is also worn at the Seder. At the Seder for Passover. What do we, the priests, the leaders, and you too, the royal priesthood, should be being washed. You should have garments, meaning deeds. People should see and be able to know that you're believers by the way that you act. Does that make sense? By the way that you live, by the things that you do. There was more about leadership. There's something, I think we saw it in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah. There's a term that comes up about one of the kings is given the keys of the kingdom. The keys of the kingdom. And that's an interesting phrase. We've heard it before. Look in Matthesyahu 16:19, and you'll understand. It's not some new term that Yeshua made up. What is this keys of the kingdom thing? It's meant for, the keys to the kingdom is meant for rulers, for binding and loosing, for having authority. Now, I want to be clear about something. Some people use that term and abuse it. Some people have taken it for their particular religious institution and said, this means we can do whatever we want. Let me explain authority to you. I was in the military, and a lot of people, and this is the same in the political world as well. There is a line of authority that comes down from the top. Now, if the federal government makes laws, the state governments, if there's no law made, the state government can make up whatever laws it wants on a particular topic. But if the federal government has made a law, the state government is not supposed to be able to supersede the federal government's law. And the same thing from the state government down to where it flows from there to local governments are not supposed to be allowed to supersede state governments or the federal government's laws. Mm-hmm. The same is true in the military. If the Secretary of the Navy makes a regulation, then the Chief of Naval Operations or some petty officer in Guantanamo Bay is not allowed to make their own regulation that supersedes that one. If the Secretary of the Navy says you will not give away military secrets, right? Mm-hmm. Or you will not disclose this particular information, I have made it classified. It's not up to a captain of a ship somewhere to declassify it. You don't have that authority. The same thing with these keys of the kingdom. If God gives his commandments, you are not allowed to say, oh, those don't matter anymore.
That's the Old Testament. That was done away with.
That's not within your realm of authority.
Nope.
You might not like that, but I'm sorry. That's not in my hands. Yeshua said he did not come to abolish the Torah,
but to fulfill it.
But to fill it full. Anyone that teaches against even the least of the commandments will barely get into the kingdom. People who teach those commandments will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Yeah, you have keys to the kingdom. Revelation 3:7, you'll see the term again. But that doesn't mean you can supersede or go against what has already been regulated by God. You can't make rules that conflict or contradict those made by God. I think that's everyone here probably knows that. Maybe some newer people don't get it. Who knows? But we need to know it very clearly. Maybe sometimes we falter a little bit. Maybe we hear a little something and it gets in our head. So look, we can battle or rebel against God or against God-given authority. And people do that. Sometimes people just make arguments for the sake of making arguments. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they make arguments even though they know they're wrong about something, you know.
Sometimes when they do that, they argue even louder.
Sometimes they even, Kenny said, sometimes when they do that, they argue even louder. So we could rebel or battle each other, or we could strive to be echad. Now, so look, there's such a thing as refining. We should, yeah, something's definitely wrong. We need to talk about it. We need to confront error when we know it's error. We need to have the right attitude too. Mm-hmm.
Approach it with
there are self-righteous people who think they're right and they're very, very wrong. And they will come at you and make statements, well, I know XYZ, and they don't know XYZ because they have ignored the context of XYZ. They don't know the original language and what it actually means, XYZ. Maybe it doesn't even say XYZ. Sometimes what they know is not even from Scripture, but it's a tradition. Mm-hmm. If we have a problem with something we're hearing or learning, the best thing to do is ask questions. Ask questions. Mm-hmm. Not to say, oh, I know that's wrong. Well, maybe you want to explain how it is that you know something's wrong. Because maybe that knowledge that it's wrong is actually wrong. Maybe you don't remember where it even came from. I've seen that. People have errors and they don't even remember where they came from. They can't explain where they got them from. They just know them. Because tradition, one of the things about tradition, people, you're taught something over and over and over to get it into your soul. It's wrong. It's going to still get into your soul, getting it over and over and over again, unless you have some sort of an awakening. We need to be alert. We need to check, like the Bereans. That's called nobility. That's being noble. It's not an office someone can give you, a title someone can give you to be a noble. Being noble is having a mind of your own and being able to check things with a sincere heart, with a goal of truth, asking questions. Maybe there are things, even when you look on your own, you don't quite understand. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But maybe that's why you ask questions. But instead of being a battler, be a seeker. And if you're a seeker, how do you approach it differently? Instead of being acting like a rebel or something, right? Strive to be echad. To be, humility. Thank you, Janet. He loves humility. Strive to be echad. What is echad?
One.
There's one, but it's a one that is like a unity. It can be a numeric one or it can be a unity. Devarim, Deuteronomy 6:4. It's the watchword of Israel, right? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Adonai Echad. If you think that's always absolute unity, as saying that there's no room for Father and Son, for example, then you're not understanding it right. Look at Bereshit, Genesis 2:18. Bereshit, that's Genesis, chapter 2, verse 18. And you will find God saying that it's not good for the man to be alone. Not good for the man to be alone. And so that's when he first created man, it was one being. One being. But it was not good for that one being to be alone. As a matter of fact, right now it's not good for one person to be alone. It's still not good for one person to be alone. So, we've got this coronavirus. Some people are trapped at home alone. Yeah. And again, we should care about each other. Mm-hmm. So check on each other. And that's not just for coronavirus. Someone that's recovering as an alcoholic or something, and they're a believer. Check on them.
Elderly.
Talk to them. The elderly, even when it's not during this corona crisis. Check on them. Not because it's a duty, but because you care.
Because you love that person.
How do you love your neighbor and ignore when they're in need? Okay. Then we go to Bereshit 2:24, 6 verses later, and we find in that verse this word echad. Adonai says the two will be echad. How many will be echad?
Two.
Two will be echad. Adam, and Chava. Adam and Chava shall be echad. It's interesting, they can be echad and yet be more than one. Yeshua has a prayer for us the night before he died, the night he was betrayed. He had a prayer for us. And his prayer was we would be echad. That we would be echad. And not just any kind of echad, not that we would somehow become one being smushed into one like physical being or something, but in unity. And what kind of unity? What did he compare it to? That we would be echad, even as, or just like, in the same manner that he, Yeshua, and the Father are echad. I wanted to read something from the Psalms that struck me too. We're reading a number of Psalms lately, the Psalms of Ascent. We're going through the, right, and we're on 123. Well, now we're beyond Psalm 123, but this week we had Psalm 123, or Tehillah 123, a song of ascents. I raise my eyes to you, whose throne is in heaven, as a servant looks to the hand of his master, or slave girl to the hand of her mistress. So our eyes turn, or in this way, our eyes turn to Adonai, our God. He is our provider. He's the one who gives us what we need and brings us through. How long? Until he has mercy on us. We don't give up. We keep our eyes on him. Have mercy on us, Adonai. Have mercy. We have had our fill of contempt, more than our fill of scorn from the complacent. Oftentimes the complaints, the scorn, comes from the spiritually complacent. People who have no clue, or some people who have some clue. The complacent and contempt had our fill of contempt from the arrogant. The arrogant is matched with contempt. People who are most boisterous, the most arrogant, the most contemptuous, usually have less knowledge than the others. And there's a reason for that. When you're a very arrogant person, it means you don't listen to other people. And if you don't listen to other people, you can't learn from them. We can all learn things from each other. But you can't learn things if your ears are not open. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to move now to John chapter 8 that we read this week. And this is where we'll start to wrap up. I've only got one sheet of notes here, just letting you know. We're getting near the bottom. And in John 8, we are looking at an illegal, by the way, illegal, self-righteous mob. Do you think they were also arrogant? A self-righteous, illegal mob trying to make a court decision outside of a court and trying to make Yeshua be the judge for that illegal court. Trying to trap the teacher. The self-righteous people still do that. Try to trap teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And how does Yeshua respond to them when they try to force him to be a judge of an illegal, not even really a court, just a mob?
He says, "You who are without sin, cast the first stone."
The one without sin. You cast the first stone. Make your judgment. Show me how righteous you are. You know, at least in that mob, they were pretty sincere people. Because if they weren't, they would have thrown the stones. I wonder how that would go with some people today. I think I can think of some people who would throw the stones and not really even think about themselves.
No, because a lot of people in their own eyes, they believe that they're a god of some sort.
Self-righteousness is rampant.
Mm-hmm.
And look, this woman, after he saves her, after he rescues her, what does he tell her? What does he tell her?
No more.
Go. The accusers are gone. Go. I'm not going to accuse you either. Basically forgiven here.
Mm-hmm.
Go. But it doesn't end there. Go and sin no more. And what is sin?
Whatever isn't of God.
Sin is defined by lawlessness. And what law are we talking about? The law of gravity? No. We're talking about God's law. Go and stop breaking the Torah, or worse things will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Go and stop breaking God's law. Stop breaking the Torah. Yes, it matters. Mm-hmm. And remember, this is after she was saved, after she was rescued. Verse 30 to 32 in John 8. Verse 30 to 32. Is where we start getting to my point here. Right? Is it 8? Yeah. Many people who heard him say these things trusted in him. So Yeshua said to the Judeans, that's Jews, Judeans from Judea, who had trusted him, if you obey what I say, then you are really my Talmidim. You will know the truth. People who obey him are the ones who will know the truth, and the truth will set them free. That's the context. That's the context for you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You've got to obey him, or you're not going to get it. You can see a brownie, you can smell a brownie, but you got to taste the brownie to really know if it's a good brownie. Do you understand? When you hear this, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Understand the context. It has to do with obedience and being Talmidim. Those are the ones who will know the truth. Those are the ones who will be set free by that truth. Verse 39. Here I'm going to come through a little bit here. He also says, everyone who practices sin is a slave of sin. Don't practice sin. You might fall down that accidentally, Don't practice. You don't eat brownies? I don't know, whatever works for you. Elijah. Verse 39, if you are children of Abraham, then do the things Abraham did. If you are children of Abraham, then do the things Abraham did. That may seem simple. I want to show you this book. I hope you can see. By Dan Gruber, who does a nice study, enough of a study to write a book about just that, children of Abraham. It's based on that concept. Who are the children of Abraham then? Who's doing the things of Abraham? What exactly was it that Abraham did? Obedience is better than sacrifice. Yeah, that's That's right. Are you a child of Abraham? If you are, then do what Abraham did. I want to look down verses 46 to 58, combing through 46 to 58. He said, Yeshua said, whoever obeys my teaching, obeys my teaching. He doesn't say whoever says a magic prayer. He says whoever obeys my teaching will never see death. Now, the reason they would be obeying his teaching is because they have faith in him. They would have an emunah that is evidenced, a faith, a trust that is evidenced in their life. So it's not the deeds themselves. My father, the very one, okay, they asked him, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Can you imagine talking to the Messiah and saying, and having this sort of arrogant attitude? Who do you think you are? In verse 53 at the end. Who do you think you are? Part of his answer is very illuminating. My father, this is about halfway through verse 54, starts, my father, the very one about whom you keep saying, he is our God. So the answer, Yeshua, if I praise myself, my praise counts for nothing. The one who is praising me is my Father. And they're asking about who's this Father of yours? His Father, he says, my Father, and he explains who his Father is. For those who are confused out there as to whether Yeshua is the Son of God, he says, my Father, comma, let me explain who he is for you, the very one about whom you keep saying he's our God. Is that clear enough? I think it's very clear.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very clear. And in verse 55, at the very end, he says, this is Yeshua, I obey his word. I obey the Father's word. Some say this makes him unequal or something. It's a functional subordination. That means he's not like a lesser being or something. You could have a king who's very old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his son is fairly young and very strong. Which one is more powerful? Well, that depends what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But just because the king has the power doesn't mean the son is weaker. Now, we're not saying it's the opposite either. I'm just using this as a reference point to show you it's functional subordination. He obeyed him because of the relationship of a son to a father, showing us as children of God how we are to be living, and that means living in obedience. I can see the picture flickering in the bottom right corner. Is the picture flickering on the live stream? Is the live stream bad? Please let me know.
I don't know if it's flickering. It's kind of skipping.
Yeah, it's a picture skipping. I don't know if I don't care so much about the picture as if you can hear me. That's the point. That's where the message is.
Yeah.
I obey his word. And he says more. He says, Abraham, your father, was glad that he would see my day. Then he saw it. Abraham saw Yeshua's day and was overjoyed. And he did this right in the temple grounds. And this is where they're like, you're not even 50. You're telling us you saw Abraham. What does that mean? The sages knew already. They were saying this to him, mocking what he said, even though the sages had already written. They already knew, like from Micah chapter 5, that the Messiah is from eternity past. They already knew. What's the mocking about? The mocking isn't about the nature of Messiah. The mocking is about, we don't believe you are the Messiah. And some did also believe he was Messiah. Now. Some did. Apparently some didn't. And this talk about Abraham and who are his children and what did he do? This is where we go back to Hebrews chapter 11, right where we left off on verse 8. By trusting, see this by faith, by trusting, this is an action. This is a living thing inside of you. By emunah, Abraham, what? Obeyed. There was evidence of his faith. How did we see it? He obeyed. He obeyed in what way? After being called to go out to a place which God would give him as a possession. Indeed, he went out without knowing where he's going. Without knowing where he's going. By trusting, by emunah, by faith. He lived as a temporary resident in the land, talking about Israel, the land of promise, the land of Canaan, as if it were not his own, staying in tents with Yitzchak and Yaakov, Isaac and Jacob, who were to receive what was promised along with him. So they were to receive what was promised. When did they receive that?
A long time.
When did Isaac and Jacob receive Israel, the land?
They didn't.
What's that?
They didn't.
They didn't yet.
Their ancestors did, but they didn't.
Their descendants did.
Yeah, descendants, yeah.
But they will. The scripture says they will receive what was promised. God's not a liar.
Nope.
And what does that mean? After the resurrection, it has to be a resurrection for this to happen.
Yeah.
They will inherit that land. For he was looking forward, Abraham was looking forward to the city with permanent foundations, of which the architect and builder is God. By faith, by emunah, by a belief that is evidence, Abraham received potency to father a child even when he was past the age for it, very well past the age for it.
Yeah.
As was Sarah herself, because he regarded the one. He regarded the one who had made the promise as trustworthy. Therefore, this one man who was virtually dead fathered descendants. Not just some descendants, it said descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the grains of sand on the seashore. How much does faith matter? All these people kept on trusting. We were talking about other people in previous messages, kept on believing, kept on trusting. They kept their emunah until they died without receiving what had been promised. They had only seen it and welcomed it from a distance, while acknowledging that they were aliens and temporary residents on the earth. For people who speak this way make it clear that they are looking for a fatherland. If they were to keep recalling the one they left, the land that they left, they would have an opportunity to return. But as it is, they aspire to a better land, a heavenly land. This is why God is not ashamed to be called Eloheinu, our God, their God. For he has prepared for them a city. Their trust is not in vain. By emunah, by trusting Abraham when he was put to the test, offered up Yitzchak, Isaac, his own son who he loved, as a sacrifice. Yes, he offered up his only son whom he loved, he who had received the promises. Isaac is the one who the promise was given to. He was supposed to be the seed Messiah would come through. He's the seed that of Abraham's own body, not and his wife, not from the handmaid, to whom it had been said, what is called your seed will be in Yitzchak. God said that to him. That was the promise. And he was going to offer him up because God said to offer him up. For he had concluded, why would he do such a thing? Because he had concluded that God could even raise people from the dead. When Yeshua was confronted by the Tzedukim, the Sadducees, about resurrection, he could have used this passage as well. But he only needed one, because the Torah can't be broken. There's nothing erroneous there. And figuratively speaking, Abraham did so receive Yitzchak back from the dead. I'm going to stop there because that's about Abraham. There's a lot in there about things that Abraham did. Do you live like Abraham, children of Abraham? Do you obey God even when you don't understand why? Do you believe him even when the things he says seem impossible? How strong is your faith? Are you children of Abraham? I want to finish with Bereshit 18. Just 2 verses. Bereshit, that's Genesis, chapter 18. Chapter 18, verse 18 and 19. Abraham is sure to become a great and strong nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by him. Adonai was saying, should I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Inasmuch as, and here's the fact part, Abraham is sure to become a great and strong nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed by him. Should I hide things from him, seeing as that's true? For I have made myself known to him. This Adonai saying, I have made myself known to Abraham, so that, because, in order that he, Abraham, will give orders to his children and to his household, who are not from his body, by the way, not his own personal descendants, after him, to keep the way of Adonai. What are the people who follow Yeshua called? What is the sect called? The way. Haderech. The way of what? The way of Adonai. Abraham, God knew, Adonai knew, Hashem knew that Abraham would give orders to his children and to his household after him to keep the way of Adonai and to do what is right and just. What's the difference between righteousness and justice? What's the difference between doing what's right personally and doing justice? I know immediately maybe you say, oh, there's no difference in that, but there is a difference. I'm not a big on philosophy, I'm not. But Aristotle, one of the ideas of Aristotle, there's like an idea of righteousness for an individual. You're doing what's best for you. I mean, in his mind, it wasn't about morality or biblical morals. It was about what's best for you. How do you live the best life, right, or whatever. But then at some point in maturity in his teaching, he's talking about a sense of justice. What's best, not just for you to live a best life. And we know how to live the best life, Torah, by the way. So yes, it matches up in that way. What's best Aristotle said, at some point when you're mature enough, what's best for society? And that's justice. That's where justice comes in. That's where consideration of other people comes in. That's where the Torah teaches us not just to love God, but to love our neighbor as well, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Adonai knew that Abraham would teach his children to do what is right and what is just, so that Adonai may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. So that Adonai may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Those descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and in the sand, the grains of sand, as many as from the whole seashore. They come from people. The promises are fulfilled for people who are following the way of Adonai. They're following the way of Adonai because they believe in Adonai, because of their emunah, because of their belief, because of their trust. They're not making God owe them, but he's rewarding them. Be the children of Abraham. Be the children of Abraham. Don't just think you are. Don't just think theologically, like some abstract concept of how you're spiritually children of Abraham. If you're children of Abraham, do the things Abraham did. Live the way Abraham did. Abraham rejoiced when he saw the day of Messiah. And I hope you do too. Let me grab this Siddur so we can close with the blessing. I am feeling much better, but we're still sitting apart. Kathy's right over there. There's nothing wrong, but we want to make sure, right? We want to keep the rabbi's wife safe over there. So, am I on the right channel today? Am I Kehilat Elohim, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, good. If you're together with anyone, I don't know how you want to do it. You do how you want to do it. Maybe you could, instead of holding another person's hand, you could hold a stick or something, and they hold the other end, right? So you can be connected somehow, symbolic of our unity and our connectedness. Maybe you want to just touch your whatever you're watching on your phone or a computer in a way with a sense of connection in your spirit to everyone else who's watching, and everyone else maybe who can't be watching but is praying for us or thinking about us, or who couldn't get here to watch because they're sick or had connection issues. Anyway, as I say the blessing, join me if you know it. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom. Adonai bless you and keep you. Adonai make his face to shine on you and be gracious to you. Gracious to you. Abundantly gracious to you. Adonai lift up his countenance upon you. Upon you. You. And give you his perfect peace, his shalom during these difficult, trying times. Be encouraged, be at peace. B'Shem Yeshua. Amen.
Amen.